We gather this afternoon to remember and to celebrate the life of one who filled our world with his goodness, his love, his extraordinary spirit, and outstanding example. In humility and gratitude, we turn to the wisdom of our tradition for comfort, for guidance, and for understanding. Throughout the centuries, when our people would be faced with difficulty, with loss, they would say, Esa'inai el heharim, I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Esa'inai el heharim, me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Esa'inai el heharim, me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from where will my help come? I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from where will my help come? Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are as a passing shadow. We come and go like grass which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going, for when we die we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted, and behold the upright. They shall have peace. For those of you for whom the 23rd Psalm is familiar, I invite you to join with me at this time. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. When I die, remember me with a smile and laughter. If thoughts of me provoke no love, only sadness and tears, I ask that I be soon forgotten. Give what's left of me away to children and old ones who wait to die. And if you must cry, cry for your brother or sister who walks in grief beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. You can love me most by letting love live within the circle of your arms, embracing the frightened ones. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. My dear C, Stephen and Patty, Robert, Maria, dear Jody, grandchildren, family, dear friends. There are two great architects in Jewish tradition. In the book of Exodus, we are introduced to Bezalel, the chief architect and builder of the very first Jewish sanctuary, which was a portable structure the ancient Israelites carried with them for 40 years during their desert wanderings. We refer to it as the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the portable sanctuary that represented for the Israelites God's dwelling place, and therefore God's presence in their midst, even as they wandered from place to place on their way to the promised land. Bezalel is so renowned in Jewish tradition that the major school of art in Israel is called the Bezalel School. Fast forward about 1,000 years, and the Israelites are now living in the ancient land of Israel. Solomon reigns as king over a united and stable kingdom and embarks upon the construction of a permanent sanctuary, what became the great temple in Jerusalem, the Wailing Wall, or Western Wall, that still stands today in Jerusalem, is the only remnant of that remarkable structure, begun almost 3,000 years ago. The chief architect and visionary for this sacred project was King Solomon himself. Both artists, Bezalel and Solomon, are endowed by God with certain qualities that make them worthy to build the sacred structures that bear their names. We read that Bezalel was singled out by God and given a divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of craft. King Solomon is identified in our tradition with divinely inspired wisdom. He is one who can discern truth from falsehoods and brings a sense of justice and right to every deliberation and every difficult decision. He is deemed worthy of the vastly more complex and extensive construction of the temple, what would represent the permanent site for the ancient Israelites to access a sense of God's presence in their midst. As I thought about Bill Dorsky, the multifaceted nature of his prodigious talent and skill, his absolute passion for architecture and design, his wise counsel and support of so many, his sense of purpose, his determination, his perseverance, and his remarkable ability to envision structures, locations, original creations, bold initiatives, alternative realities, directions, and possibilities in one's work, in one's relationships, in one's circumstances and expectation, in one's life. I could not help but think of his particular ancestors, his patron spirits, as it were, whom our tradition upholds as exemplars of the very qualities that Bill evidenced throughout his life. He had the artistry, industry, creativity, and integrity of Bezalel. To those who knew him, loved him, and had the good fortune to work with and learn from him, he seemed to have the wisdom and discernment of King Solomon himself. He also had the wit and humor of, well, Donald Duck. His lifelong and important friendship with the Disney character began early on in the Glenville neighborhood of Cleveland, which Bill described as 1/3 Jewish, 1/3 Italian, and 1/3 African American. It was an upwardly mobile melting pot microcosm of the American experience. As the second child of Jack and May Dorsky, Bill was Jerry's younger brother and shared with him a relationship of love and respect. When Jerry married, Bill welcomed Gloria into the family, as well as his nephews Stuart and David, and then David's Valerie. As a child, Bill was very shy, in large measure because he was a stutterer. He pursued sports and was particularly gifted at basketball and tennis, and must have been quite comfortable communicating with racket and balls as opposed to speech. He also loved to draw. He would spend hours drawing the Disney characters over and over again. He could not have known that he was honing his skills as an architect, as from his childhood he thought he would one day work for the Disney company. As he related, the nature and trajectory of his life changed when he was in college at Western Reserve. In a conscious effort to overcome his shyness, Bill joined the Phi Sigma Delta fraternity, and to address his stuttering, he took a course in public speaking. In order to fulfill one of his classroom assignments, Bill faced the blackboard at the front of the class rather than the class itself, and with chalk in hand, drew an image of Donald Duck on the board as he delivered his presentation on how to create a cartoon. It was genius. By focusing on something other than his listeners or his words, and by turning away from the judging eyes and ears of professor and classmates, Bill conquered his stutter. It was gone. He also became more socially adept as he served his fraternity as an officer and developed enduring friendships. His college experience proved to be a major watershed on many levels. He entered Western Reserve expecting to be a commercial artist, until he wandered into the architecture department one day and thought, I like this. He enrolled in the 5-year architecture program, but for some reason, he didn't work very hard at it. That is, until one of his professors suggested he should leave the department and find something else to do. It seems that was the motivation he needed, to actually go to class and do the work. Upon reflection, it seems reasonable and intuitive that a student and ultimately a master of architecture would have to both follow the rules and have the creativity, imagination, and iconoclasm to envision bold, innovative, and exciting structures. It is what both Bezalel and Solomon did. They imagined and created structures for the first time that no one had ever seen or experienced. In a very real sense, Bill made up his own rules, using the skills and talents at which he excelled. He was a star basketball player at Glenville High, who gathered 4 other Jewish players and pitched the idea of a Jewish basketball team as the evening's nightly entertainment at the Steers Hotel in the Catskills. He succeeded in securing a summer job for himself and for 4 of his friends, as busboys during the day and Jewish basketball stars at night, kind of Jewish Harlem Globetrotters. He did this for several summers, and thus put himself through college. Despite the anomaly of his initial years at Western Reserve, Bill not only worked hard all of his life, he insisted on doing his best at all times and expected nothing less from his loved ones, employees, and colleagues. As a high school student, he worked as a counselor at Camp Wise, and while he was still in college, he started freelancing. He would draw houses for various builders. They would purchase his drawings and build according to his specifications. His entrepreneurial spirit may have been partially responsible for his lackluster performance in class. When he finally did graduate, he found his first official position at the firm of Garfield, Harris, Robinson, and Schaefer. Even though he was gainfully employed, he continued to do drawings of houses for various builders in the evenings at home, until his moonlighting made him so tired that he fell asleep at work. To add insult to injury, One of the partners of his firm saw him meeting one of his freelance clients in the lobby of their building. Mr. Garfield confronted him. "I hear you're doing pretty well on the side." Bill did not deny it. So Garfield continued, "I think you should do it full time." When Bill would tell the story, he would regale his listeners with the admission that he was practically home before he realized he had been fired. He was married to Mona, whom he had met when they were both in high school, and was already the proud father of Sharon, Stephen, and Robert. What makes for a great story now could only have been frightening and unsettling at the time. True to Bill Dorsky's rules of determination and perseverance, however, he went into business for himself. He set up his office in the attic of the house on Haverston and Lyndhurst. He hired another architect, Wayne Short, and the first of several iterations of William Dorsky Associates began. It is currently William U. This was the heart and soul of his work. He began with his house clients, many of whom referred him to others or were patrons to him as he sought diversity in his projects. He grew his business to include apartment houses, office buildings, shopping centers, hotels, resorts, mixed-use residential, business, and commercial development, from River Square in Fort Lauderdale to Cornerstone at Coral Springs, to Palm Beach, to Crossgates Mall in Albany, New York, to Bruckner Commons in the Bronx, to Greenwood Town Center in Indiana, to the Altoona Zadeh Hotel in Istanbul, Turkey, to the Shahdag Winter Summer Resort in Azerbaijan, to Legacy Village, right here in Cleveland. He built an international firm known for its excellence, its fresh, innovative design, anchored in a timeless aesthetic of classicism. As Bill himself said about the design of his house on Letchworth, which he undertook as architect and contractor, with Mona as the client, he had three goals: more dignity in appearance than most modern house architecture displays, a touch of the classical in design that hints this house is one in a long line of human habitations, and a chance to enjoy the quiet of the woods in the rear of his two lots. It is still a fabulous house in which Sharon, Stephen, Robert, and baby Jody, who was not part of the family equation when the project started, were proud to grow up and call home. It was state-of-the-art in every possible way. The electric oven was a forerunner of the microwave. There was a central vacuum system and a blender and grinder built into the countertop of the kitchen. His house, his work, his ever-growing firm marked him as a person, if not singled out by God, at least gifted with a divine spirit of skill, ability, and knowledge in every kind of architectural discipline. And with the true Solomonic quality of wisdom, he and Cornelia Hodgson, whom we affectionately know as Cece, and is a brilliant architect and visionary in her own right, pulled off the almost inconceivable feat of designing for both nonprofit clients in the realm of progressive retirement housing for seniors and the for-profit realm of offices, shopping centers, apartment complexes, and mixed-use development. He was particularly wise in finding kindred spirit, beloved partner, and soulmate in C.C. Hodgson. Bill Dorsky loved his children, Sharon, Stephen, Robert, and Jody. He wasn't exactly hands-on, warm and fuzzy, although he did teach his kids how to hook baskets as he did. He shared his love of tennis and all sports with them. He coached Robert and Stephen's baseball teams. He was also a wise counselor, willing sounding board, and deliberator. He was a better father and grandfather of older children, with whom he could talk and reason and discuss anything that might be on their minds. He actually treated all children the same, as adults, which both empowered them and conveyed his high expectations. He was a true patriarch of the family, with C at his side, gifted in knowledge, skill, ability, and wisdom. He was an important mentor and guide to Stephen, a model and example to Robert, a pillar of strength for Jody that became somewhat gentler more recently. He was fun and funny, and they all delighted in his sense of humor. His presence demanded a lot of them, as his stature, his work, his interests, and his talents made him a larger-than-life presence for each of them. His outside status was somewhat mitigated by his deep humanity, his humility based upon his modest roots and upbringing, his understanding that one can always be and do better, and his faith. And it was so special whenever he and C were at services, always right there, in the front, towards the front, on my left-hand side. He was a focus of our attention and our gratitude. As he himself wrote in Clearing the Air, I agree, being mad is sometimes bad. If one is only a tad mad, then it's also a tad bad. Further, if one continues to stay mad, that would truly be very sad. So I now stand corrected. I wasn't mad. I was just disappointed. But there's a difference between being disappointed and the harshness of being disjointed. He loved words, loved to write poems for any occasion, situation, holiday, birthday, celebration. He would spend hours writing, revising, editing, and rewriting, and then would lament to see that it wasn't good enough. The family looked forward to every creation, and no gathering was complete without a William Dorsky original. Bill embraced his children's spouses. As Sharon married, Stephen found his Patty. Robert married Maria and Jody, David, Zichrono Livracha. Bill loved his children, but being a grandparent was another adventure altogether, as he and Cece welcomed Nick Gerald, Lynn, and now Michael Krimmer, with great-grandchildren Caitlin and Evan, Allison, Matthew, with his Sarah, and their great-granddaughters, Josie May, Nora Ann, and Sadie Grace, born at 3:47 this morning. Marissa, Jesse, Jack, Ryan, and Jake, as Patty has written, on behalf of them all. For Bill, from your loving family. The philosopher Meister Eckhart wrote, if the only prayer you ever say your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. When trying to write a tribute to Bill, one word kept popping up, gratitude. Thank you, Bill. It is such a rare gift to have someone like Bill in all our lives. Lots of people come in and out of our lives, but very few people are like Bill. He stamps a huge impression upon all of us. The biggest impression is humor and laughter. What an amazing gift. He could interject his sly wit and make any situation better. Again, gratitude. Thank you, Bill, for every wonderful family holiday dinner. Thank you for every time you took the grandkids aside and really listened to what was going on in their lives and school and gave advice. Thank you for the amazing trips, dinners, sharing your love of the theater, dancing on wheels, which he loved and supported wholeheartedly. Thank you for showing perseverance in the face of diversity. Thank you for showing us the example of a loving marriage with C, what a truly equal partnership looks like. Thank you for all the great intellectual conversations and all the conversations that ended up with an Inspector Clouseau impression. Thank you for setting the example of always striving to be your best, do better, take risks, fall, pick yourself up, and try again. There will never be another Bill Dorsky, Never. He was just that one-of-a-kind person. But we are so very grateful for the time we had. We will cherish and honor your memory. Bill, just thank you. 4 years after they were married, about 30 years ago, Bill was stricken with Guillain-Barré syndrome, to the extent that he would not walk again. It was a devastating diagnosis for one who had been so strong, so active, so vital, and seemingly invincible. Now he had to learn how to transfer to a wheelchair and how to navigate with Lofstrand crutches. He did. And as we might expect, he adopted the attitude that nothing was going to get in his way as he refused to become an invalid and continued to work, to travel, to go out to restaurants, the Cavs games, and other sporting events. He adopted the attitude that his difficulty with mobility was not his problem, but the problem of those whose places of business he wanted to enter. It all became a challenge he chose to overcome, and he never complained about it. He and Cece planned trips to visit the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. When 6 of them turned 13, Grandpa Bill and Granny C took them on trips to New York. They took Lynn and Matt together, and then Allison and Marissa, and then Jesse and Ryan. They were not able to take the youngest 2, Jack and Jake, although Bill was at Ryan's lacrosse game just 2 weeks ago. No more jokes about being late, 'cause the new me is always on time, allowing me more lines on each subject, thereby shortening my efforts to rhyme. Looking forward to you being at Seder. I really hope you express a thought, an observation, or something you've been taught, and after the Afikoman search is done, we'll both catch up on what's new, even if the prize you haven't won. This could have been written up to here for any of the grandchildren. In this case, it was for Jack. Have a super happy birthday, 12, with much success in whatever you delve. It is signed with a Donald Duck. I don't know if you can see it. Some Seder thoughts, please, he emphasized. She walked into his office for a job interview. He recognized her talent and the contribution she could make to the firm immediately. The more smitten he became with her, however, the harder he was on her professionally, lest anyone think, even for a moment, that her success was because he loved her. He did, and she loved him. They were together for 12 years before they finally married on December 2nd, 1989. Everyone could see it. Everyone felt it. They shared an unusually close, supportive, respectful, and loving relationship. And C made all the difference in his life. Without her support, her devotion, her presence at his side, he would not have been able to carry on so seamlessly. While running what became organized as her firm, which she expanded and grew, and for which she travels all over the country, C was always there with Bill when she needed to be, assisted by Jim Busher, but crucially present, and increasingly in these last years and months, in charge of their lives. To echo Patty, everyone who knows you, C, who knew you and Bill, is grateful for your skill, ability, knowledge, and wisdom, for your blessed presence in his life. As dear friend Dr. Dennis Becker wrote upon learning of Bill's passing, I am a man of words and speech, yet at this moment I can hardly find the words or speak the emotions I feel in my heart and soul. Bill is one of my favorite people in the world. I say is because his infectious, annoying, challenging, loving, and sincere personality is and will be with me every day of my life. In his own way, I always felt that I was one of his favorite people too. I am proud to be one of his universal minion, and now that I cannot be part of his final minion, I am sad. For several decades, Bill and Cornelia and my wife Paula and I had a wonderful mutual admiration relationship. And yes, the person you know as Cece gave me permission, in fact invited me to call her by her given name, Cornelia. We were two in-love couples who loved working together with our spouses. Well, maybe loved is not the right word, but it was great. He and I both admitted that to each other when our wives were not around. I lovingly called Bill the General. He always wanted me to know that he was the General, and I was one of his lieutenants, or maybe a captain, or when he was particularly annoyed with me, I became a private. Oh yes, there were a few times when he softly, so no one else would hear, would call me Dr. Becker, or Dr. Becca, in his best Boston accent. I live in Boston. On the other hand, he had cats and I had dogs, something else we would chide each other about. We occasionally exchanged poems that we wrote about each other, or some odd topic that fascinated both of us. It is that part of my remembrances of him that helps me recall some appropriate words from the Kutzker Rebbe that seem to fit this part of my relationship and the General. All that is thought should not be said. All that is said should not be written, and that is written. All that is written should not be read. Practical jokes were another thing we shared, like the time I called him, disguising my voice, and chastised him for doing shoddy, unprofessional work on my project. At first he assured me that there must be some mistake, that his reputation, track record, and professionalism were of great importance to him. As I persisted in being disrespectful and somewhat insulting, I could hear the Papa Bear coming out of his cave of comforting language, so I gave up the ruse. At first he was silent, then laughter, then he swore to get back at me. And so it went between us, two grown men who liked each other and enjoyed each other's fun-loving intent. Of course, there were parts of him that I will miss, like his jokes, his poems, the talks about family, and his ever-present eagerness to help me help his colleagues. Of course, I'll miss that big bear gentleness and embracing smile. There are many of those things that we will all miss. When my wife died several years ago, Bill and Cornelia helped me remember what I now remind all of us to do as, in our own ways, we sit Shiva. Don't cry because he is gone. Smile because we had him. Bill and I are truly kindred spirits. I smile each time I think of him. I invite you to do the same. He is still with us. Because this is true, and because Bill was, in his big bear huggiest way, always concerned with the well-being of others, it is with his permission that I leave us with the words of the old Jewish blessing. May the Master of Comfort comfort you. Blessed are those who comfort the mourners. Thank you, General. Lead on. Peace. Your captain, Dennis Becker. And we, your troops, say, Zichrono Livracha. May your memory and our aspirations to be skillful, able, knowledgeable, and wise in your memory be always for blessing. And let us say, Amen. I call now on grandson Jack Dorsky, and then on friends Jack Conamy and John Burke, and then granddaughter Allison to share some reflections with us.
Good afternoon. My name's Jack Dorsky, and I'm Bill's youngest grandchild. My older brother Matt has prepared a few words for you today but fittingly and sticking to the Jewish tradition for the cycle of life that states there is a birth and there is a death. Matt's wife, Sarah, gave birth to a baby girl this morning. Sadie Grace is Bill's 5th great-grandchild. I'll be reading on Matt's behalf. It was Ernest Hemingway who said, "Every man's life ends the same way. It is only the details of how he lived and how he died that distinguish one man from another." I am here today to tell you about a little bit about the man that I knew as Grandpa Bill. Now, you may know him differently. You may know him as William, Bill, Billy, WD, or Mr. Dorsky. For those of you who worked with him, you may have had some other names that you used for him from time to time. I would respectfully ask that you keep those to yourself today. Because I knew him as Grandpa Bill, I'll be telling you about the version of the man that I knew. From my earliest memories, I recall a man who was larger than life, literally and figuratively. A man that filled a room with his presence, but not with his voice. I remember a man who listened more than he spoke, but heard far more than was said. Growing up, I knew that my grandfather and C were successful leaders of a business that required a large amount of their attention. Now, I didn't appreciate it earlier in life, but looking back at that time that our family spent together for holidays, birthdays, and other celebrations, you would never have known how busy they were. When it was time to gather with the family, that was the main focus and nothing else mattered. We took family trips to Chicago, Washington, D.C., and a cruise through the Caribbean. I never remember him taking a phone call, sending an email, or writing down a note to remind him of a thought that needed attention when he returned to the office. Furthermore, if you asked him about how things were going with business, he usually said something like, "Good," and then redirected the conversation to something about you. The other response to the question about work would result in Grandpa Bill telling us about something that Granny C was working on. We all know that many years ago, my grandfather was faced with health issues that changed his life significantly. I'm not going to focus on those issues or the details of the illness, and that's because he never did. The only memories that I have of his illness is his unrelenting will to push forward. I remember vividly a night at his home, with all of our family gathered in the living room. Grandpa Bill and C asked that we gather together because they had a surprise for us. Grandpa Bill wheeled himself to one end of the living room in his wheelchair, where C was waiting with his canes. He stood up from his wheelchair and steadied himself with the canes. Then he picked up the canes and walked without their support all the way across the living room. All of us were amazed at what we saw that night. Grandpa Bill was smiling like I had never seen before, and Granny C looked on with pride. It would have been easy for someone of his age to concede to the struggle of his illness and just move on with a new normal. This was not the case for my grandfather and C. Luckily for Grandpa Bill, he had a partner in his fight for health, his fight for rehabilitation, and most notably, his fight for independence. The partnership that existed between Grandpa Bill and Granny C was one to behold. Everyone knows of the professional endeavors that they tackled together, but what I saw was something different, something special. I saw a couple who took great pride in tradition, family, and setting an example for what is right. The mutual respect that existed between the two of them was legendary. Grandpa Bill and Granny C were nothing short of a power couple. There was nothing that could be placed in front of them that they could not handle together. Because we never really talked about his health issues or struggles, we never discussed how everyday tasks were accomplished, however. We all know that Granny C was always there for Grandpa Bill every step of the way. I think that we can all agree that between his health struggles and the struggles of leading a large, multifaceted business, my grandfather probably had a fair bit of stress in his life. I can't speak for anyone else, but I cannot think of a time where I heard my grandfather complain about a situation in life. A waiter at a restaurant or a limo driver, he would complain about them, but never about his situation in life. Our family was pretty lucky in the sense that all the grandchildren had a cousin who was about the same age as them. When my cousin Lynn and I were 11 years old, Grandpa Bill and Granny C took us on a long weekend trip to New York City. That weekend was filled with amazing experiences. From the Guggenheim to a Broadway show, from the Carnegie Deli to the Plaza Hotel restaurant. But one thing that I remember most vividly was the drive from the airport to the hotel when we arrived. I don't remember what highway we were on or the direction that we were traveling, but I remember my Grandpa Bill pointing out two of the tallest buildings in the world. Those buildings were the World Trade Center Towers 1 and 2. The year was 1998. That image in my mind, 3 years later in 2001, changed the course of my life and my career path. I wish I had made that more clear to Grandpa Bill, but I guess I didn't fully understand it until now. Here we are 20 years later, and myself and my little brother Jack are both firefighters. I have little memory of my grandfather prior to him requiring the use of his canes or a wheelchair. Even so, he could be an intimidating man. He carried himself with a sense of pride and stoicism that could make you wonder if he was excited to see you or thinking of other things. The tension was broken quickly with a big hug or a strong handshake, and a smile. Like I said earlier, my grandfather listened intently and heard more than that was said. A person's thoughts are generally private unless they choose to share. Typically, you cannot tell what or if someone is thinking. When speaking with my grandfather or in a group with him, you could tell that he was intently thinking about the words being said, rationalizing them, making sense of them, all while reading your body language and taking in the conversation. He would listen for a long time, and then, when he spoke, you listened. You listened because you know that what he was going to say was going to be worthwhile. It was going to be valuable. So what does this all mean now? Where do we go from here? Grandpa Bill is gone. The era of WD is over, right? My Grandpa Bill often ended our conversations with a challenge to perform in school, work, and in life. So I thought it would be fitting to end my time with you with a challenge to adopt some of my grandfather's best qualities into your own life. First, listen more than you speak. Spend conversation time in thought instead of speech. People will listen. Second, work hard and push towards your goals. Don't let anybody hold you back. Third, be a good leader, but be a better follower. Fourth, when it comes time for family, make them your focus. Turn off your phone, don't check your email, invest in them and let them feel your full presence. Lastly, when the world knocks you down, when life literally takes your legs out from under you, get up. Get up. I think that Hemingway hit the nail on the head when he said, "Every man's life ends the same way. It is only the details of how he lived and how he died that distinguish one man from another." William Dorsky had his flaws, as we all do, but looking at the way he lived life, I would say he lived a life worth imitating. Thank you.
Good morning. You're able to hear me? I'm not buzzing or being too soft or too loud. I'm Jack Conamy. And if I had a crown to put on my head, the honor of being asked to speak with you this morning, to mourn with you, to remember with you, the jewel in that crown would be my presence here today. I'm very, very thankful and so honored to be here. Some of my remarks will echo some of the things that you've heard already, and some will not. We're here to mourn and to remember. Don't slide over the mourning. Mourning is necessary to healing, and without it, there's no peace, and there is no healing. Bill's loss has been deep and painful and shared. It is a dies irae, lacrimosa dies illa. Now, most of you don't speak Latin at home, I know. But it's a day of rage, a day of deep sorrow, a day of burning pain, and a day of tears. And we've come here to mourn him and to share together the hard, burning fact of his loss that we've shared with his family, his friends, and she who loved him most. I'll read from the words of the poet Auden. Now, this is a poet and a photographer writing to a poet and architect. He was my north, my south, my east, my west, my morning work, my Sunday rest, my noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought love would last forever. Now he is gone. That sadness, that mourning, will be relieved only by remembrance and only by linking those things about him and his life together. What about this son of Cleveland, this prince of Glenville? Now, Glenville has 4/3, not just 3. There's an Irish end of that street. Populous, little known, but a real fact, certainly of my life. It's an Irish Catholic enclave. It's a people and a faith into which I was born, to which I've lived my life, and to which we'll go to it to the end. But there was something special about it that links me to Bill Dorsky. Yiddish was an everyday language in the house in which I was raised, thanks to my mother Marie and my grandmother Rose. Now, the link to him down at the other end of Glenville was that there was more than a bit of Irish in this man, and it came off in language. His poetry, his couplets, his verse, his limericks were right up there with Seamus Heaney, with Alexander Pope, with all of the great Irish writers, W.B. Yeats, who wrote almost as well as Bill Dorsky did. And I'll share some of that with you in just a minute. He was a big man. He was physically big. He was emotionally big. He was intellectually big. He was a member of the profession on the face of the earth that has the highest average IQ of anything and anybody. He was tough. He was brave. He was gentle. I've spent most of my life dealing with people with disability, with sorrow, with illness, with death. And you know, there's no immunity to that. There is no measles vaccine for dealing with that kind of thing. It never goes away. And I can tell you what I saw in Bill, and his grandson touched on it. He wouldn't get into it much. He wouldn't get into it deeply. Sometimes he articulated frustration, but I never once in all the years that it was my privilege to help in his care did I hear him utter a single syllable of self-pity. Not one, not ever. I met Bill about 4 decades ago through the kind ministrations of the Merry Men, Carl Brown, whose sons are with us today, and John Burke, who will be speaking to you subsequent to me. And it was a friendship and a joy. We had, as I've told you, a number of things in common, but I want to share with you a specific memory. It was a dinner night. It was cold outside, and Cece and Bill joined us for a dinner. In the course of the visit, it became necessary for him to use the guest facility in our home. The guest facility contained a large water closet that I brought home with me from France. It was ornate, it was beautiful, it was complicated, and the apparatus that made it work was not intuitive. But Bill took it upon himself. And a few minutes later, there was a great deal of squawking going on about what was wrong with this apparatus, a number of comments about the French government and the French people, and so on. So I went off to his rescue, and I showed him how to operate this complex device that made the water flow. He all of a sudden became Inspector Cousteau when he found this out, but he had transposed the French words for swimming pool and water closet. Well, we got through all of that, but 2 days later, I received this in the mail, and I'll read it to you. Now, when Bill Dorsky was having a time with the rest of the Merry Men, when he wrote these things, when he was having an ordinary and vastly entertaining conversation about anything at all, the sequence was always closed with a wink of the eye and a smile, then a chuckle. He enjoyed what he was doing, and so did everybody else. And this is what he wrote to me. Some of it is Frenchified, and I'll pick that up. He says, I resent the insult just a fortnight ago when discussing my hero, Inspector Jacques Clouseau. Your audacious inference that I couldn't discern a pissoir from a piscine causes me great concern. It should be known, monsieur, so to lessen your fears, I've been using both for more than 50 years. Your silly apparatus, the cause of my stir, whether to push or to pull, the flush to occur. But the next time I visit, I've gotten it right. I won't use that thing at all. My dog doesn't bite. And that is signed Deputy Inspector Guillaume Dorsky on July the 15th, 1998. It's that kind of thing that laced with all of our sorrow, with all of the burning pain, with all of the tough road this man took on himself, never complained about it. As has been pointed out, he did wonders. It was a wonder to me and a wonder to everyone who knew him and saw him. So it's time to say goodbye to him. Now, I can't quite get up to the poetic standards of his limericks or his couplets, but I'll try. Bill Dorsky, a son of this city, fills our hearts, not our midst, more's the pity. See us, Bill, from above, filled with sorrow and love. Give your poems to Adonai now. They're really so witty. And I'll say goodbye to him this way, in a language that I've heard in my own home. Liebe Gott mit uns. Adonai. Take our Bill by the hand to paradise. We love him. Thank you. This will be available for viewing later through the day. It's in an ornate French frame. It's an original, and it's signed, and it's very valuable.
Good afternoon. I'm John Burke. My condolences to the children, to the in-laws, the grandchildren, friends, and family on the passing of Bill Dorsky, and especially to his wife and faithful companion, Cece. I am saddened and honored to be here today. Bill Dorsky, a big man, a big man, big Bill Dorsky. He must have been the Shaq of his high school at Glenville in his basketball days. A real tabletter. He was a big man in all aspects of his life. Big in size, big in business, big in architecture, big in creativity, big in family, big in life, big in the arts. We met later in life, so I've only known Bill for 40 or 45 years. As difficult as it is for men as they age to find friends, Bill and I found that. We became friends. We became good friends. The parties at his house, the parties at my house, the birthdays, the weddings, the celebrations, the happiness and joy, the laughter. Just going out to dinner with Bill and Cece was something to look forward to and to relish. At the Albatross, at Beachmont, at Giovanni's. We would discuss the news of the day. Bill was always interested in the other person's situation, the other person's take on the situation, and he would laugh at my jokes. And Bill, forever a wordsmith, loved the puns and the crossword puzzles. Big Bill, big burly Bill, but looks can be deceiving. If he hadn't been an architect, I think he might have been an actor on the stage or the poet laureate of the United States. He loved the theater, civic events, and the arts, and his poems. For any event, he came prepared with a new poem for the occasion. And later in life, he became a pianist. Well, he tried. But then again, all of us men of a certain age become pianists, especially later at night. And the New Year's Eve parties were legendary. You had to come dressed as your favorite character in the American Revolution, your favorite character in the medieval time period, your favorite character as an artist. So there we would see the distinguished Dr. Jack Conamy on his knees with cane, pince-nez glasses, and a beard trying to pass himself off as Toulouse-Lautrec. Or Harvey Rosen as General Knox taking cannon from Fort Ticonderoga to Boston. I can picture Rosen at Fort Knox, but I can't see him hauling cannon to Boston in the winter. And Charlotte and Armin Guggenheim as Bud Abbott and Lou Costello doing Who's on First? Or myself as Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. I wanted it to be a true representation, but Nancy insisted I wear my briefs. And then the poem, one for each of us. But as good as Bill was at his job, luck beats skill. And into his life comes C.C. Hodgson. One of my first memories of the two of them was when they appeared as two coneheads at Carl Brown's 50th birthday party. And of course, with a poem. I saw the love, I saw the respect, I saw the care. And then Bill's infirmity, which might have limited some people, but not Big Bill. And Cece was always at his side. She was there for him to keep his life going. So in spite of his chair, we still supped together, we still partied together, we still went to the theater and the dancing wheels together, we still lunched together, and Cece made a lot of that happen. She was ever present. And now we say goodbye. Carl Brown and Annie Miller await you, and we will miss you. Requiescat in pace, mon ami. Oh, and the poem. An Ode to Bill by Nancy First. A beloved husband, a father, grand and great, grandfather too. You have now left us, and we are feeling blue. Architect, businessman, philanthropist, poet, and to many a fast friend, you move through life with Glenville gusto, a force to the end. As we gather to honor you, grieving and pining, we know you would be amused by our poor attempts at rhyming. So please forgive us, Bill, if we cannot make the words fit. We just can't do it like you, with such humor, wit, and shtick. Farewell, adieu, rest peacefully.
Hello, I'm Allison Dorsky, the daughter of Stephen and Patty. Whew. The granddaughter to William and C. Normally I would greet Grandpa Bill with a hello, and he would reply, "Bonjour, madame," to which I would reply, "No, no, no, mademoiselle." Then a laugh, then a hug, our tradition. Growing up, if you asked me, who is Grandpa Bill? I think I would have told you he's an architect. He's a very tall man. He's in a wheelchair. He is Jewish. He has 4 wonderful children. He hosts us for dinner, sees famous brisket. He loves to travel. He loves the theater. I probably would have told you facts. I always loved Grandpa Bill, but as with all children, when asked to describe someone we love, we default to a level at the surface. It's safe and it's easy. But as we get older, as we experience life, the circle of life, it becomes impossible to remain at the surface. We learn that on the surface, there can be ripples. Sometimes we cause the ripples. Sometimes we can only watch them spread. We learn beneath the surface, there's a depth, a weight, a level of darkness. But we embrace the depths, the strength of the currents, the energy that flows unceasingly. So as I stand here today, and I hear all the beautiful stories and tributes, and memories of my beloved grandfather, I ask myself the same question. Who is Grandpa Bill? My answer could start the same, at that surface, but now there's a new depth. Grandpa Bill was not just an architect. He was an entrepreneur. He was a visionary. He was passionate about his work, about his employees and associates. He was a partner, not just any partner. He was a partner with a woman I've always admired, who was equal in brilliance and strength. Their love was rooted in sharing a vision, a love that did not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. He was a very tall man, in stature and in spirit. He filled a room with his booming voice, his infectious laugh, and very literally filled a room with the many friends and families he so cherished. A friend of mine, the grandson to Estelle, a friend of Sidel and my grandparents, wrote me a really profound statement in his message of condolence. He said, "These remarkable men seem to gravitate towards each other, and they aren't being replaced when they leave us." He was in a wheelchair, yet his spirit never faltered. He never missed a proverbial step. He always persevered. He always endured. He never gave up. He never looked back. How many of us can say that? He was Jewish. Grandpa Bill, through our Jewish faith, taught me about family, about tradition. He taught me what it really felt like to belong to a family, to have a group so different, from all different stages of life, come together and bring their most authentic self. It was a table where I always had a seat, and I always had a voice. At this table, we learned about and discussed our past and where we came from, but we also talked about our future, our hopes, our dreams, our successes, our setbacks. At his table, we celebrated, we laughed, we cried, we put on plays, and we searched for the afikomen. Grandpa Bill was the root of our family tree, our leader. He was always the head of the table, a seat that will now compare to Elijah's, vacant but never empty. I could go on forever. I loved my grandfather with all of my heart. I hope I told him that often enough. I hope he knew the depth of my gratitude for all that he did for me and our family, for the man he was, for the family he created and nurtured. To bring it full circle, in French, the way to say I miss you is vous me manquez, literally translated, you are missing from me. I always found that to be a beautiful sentiment on the surface. Now I have someone to which this phrase has infinite meaning. So Grandpa Bell, vous me manquez, toujours, always. Rest in peace.
Thank you for those magnificent tributes to a very special man. O God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way. But you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow laden for consolation. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. Please rise. El male rachamim shochei b'amromim ametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina im kidoshim utehorim kizo harakia mazhirim et nishmat Wolf ben Yaakov Miriam shalach leolamo Bal harachamim yasterehu b'seit aknav leolamim v'yitzru et nishmato Adonai unachalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to William Dorsky, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And we say, Amen. We will continue now in procession to Mount Olive Cemetery. Immediately following, the family will receive at the Beachmont Country Club, 29600 Chagrin Boulevard, and then tomorrow and Tuesday from 6 to 9 at the Dorsky Residence at 5150 Three Village Drive in Lyndhurst.